Projects doesn't give Claude infinite memory or infinite capability. There are limits. Working around them is part of using the tool well. Every conversation has a context window, even projects. Think of it as the amount of information Claude can hold in its head at once. When you upload files, those files count towards that context window. If you upload your IPS, your thresholds file, your account reference guide, your reporting templates, and your close checklist, you're using part of your context, and that's fine. That's why you upload them. But if you upload 20 documents totaling hundreds of pages, Claude's ability to find specific things degrades. Prioritize quality over quantity. Now, what happens if you upload too much? Claude can technically access the files, but it doesn't read them all simultaneously. It searches. It decides which parts are relevant to your question and it pulls those. If the relevant section isn't clearly labeled, or if there are multiple conflicting passages, Claude makes a judgment call. Sometimes that judgment is wrong. You ask about a threshold, and Claude cites a number from an old version because the documents weren't clearly organized or clearly tagged. Here's the framework. Upload reference documents, not transactional data. Your IPS doesn't change monthly. Upload it. Your daily bank balances do change. Don't upload them. Use your system prompt for the standing framework. Use uploaded files for the documents that define that framework, your IPS, your reference guides, your standard templates. Use live prompts for daily data that changes constantly. In this structure with Claude projects, keeping files current is one of your biggest responsibilities. If your IPS gets updated in March and you don't replace what Claude is referencing, Claude's working from an outdated policy. Build a review cycle. Quarterly is usually more than enough. First week of every quarter, go to the project, check what's uploaded, replace what's changed. It takes 15 minutes and prevents catastrophic errors. When something goes wrong, diagnosis starts with the file question. If Claude cites a threshold that doesn't match your current policy, it's usually a stale file problem. Go to the project, check what's uploaded. Is that the current version of the threshold file? If not, replace it. That's 80% of the debugging work right there. There's also a practical point about conversation length. If you're in one project conversation and you ask 50 questions, eventually Claude's view of the full context window fills up. The earliest messages get compressed. If you're relying on Claude to remember something from message 3 and now you're at message 150, that might get lost. Solution: start a new conversation in the project when you're starting a new task. The system prompt runs in every conversation. The uploaded files are available in every conversation. But conversation history is just history within that conversation. Use fresh conversations for fresh tasks. Let's say in the coffee shop example, you've uploaded your thresholds file. It was accurate in January, but in February, one of the reserve minimums changed. You didn't update the file. In March, you asked Claude if your Hell's Kitchen reserve account is properly positioned. Claude is looking at January's requirements and tells you something is fine when it's actually below policy. Now that's a stale file problem. Go check the project, replace the file, ask again. Now Claude is answering from current policy. Projects has real limits, but those limits are manageable. Prioritize files, keep them current, use fresh conversations for fresh work. Do that, and the limitations become invisible. Now with that, you understand the framework of how to build a project, design the system prompt, choose what to upload, and work around the real limits. In the final section, this is where we're going to put it all together. We're going to open up Claude Projects and build a working Treasury policy assistant from scratch. Our last 4 sections have been about the building blocks. This one is where you put them together. You're going to watch me build a working project from scratch, and then you're going to be able to try this on your own. Now here's what we're building. A Treasury policy assistant for the F9 Finance coffee shop. When it's done, you'll open this project and ask it anything about cash positioning, policy compliance, account thresholds, anything Treasury related. It'll have everything it needs to answer from your configuration. I'm going to walk through 5 steps. First, we're going to create the project. Second, we're going to write the system prompt. Third and fourth, we're going to upload reference files. And fifth, we're going to test it with 3 questions and refine as needed based on the answers. So here we are working back in Claude Desktop. Now, hopefully you set that up in the last module. If you didn't, make sure to go back and watch that demo, get that set up. Also, make sure to go back and do the task in that lesson because we want to make sure that you're keeping up on everything because every single skill builds on each other. Now, from the main screen, you're going to see chat projects right here, and this is where we'll primarily be working. Again, these are essentially folders for your chats, but they're folders where we can add so much context, and you'll see several of mine right here. Now, I do want to point out if you come over to the Cowork tab, you'll see projects. And if you come over to the code tab, you'll see projects are actually down here. So what's the difference between these three projects, and do they talk to each other? Each project is a different purpose. So the projects in here are essentially just collecting your chats and running your chat through Claude, but all of this is living in Claude and in Claude Chat. As we think about the co-work and code, which we're going to cover in future lessons, these projects live on your computer in folders where they can work, or in cloud storage if you have that set up. Now, again, we're going to cover that in later lessons. I just didn't want you to get confused if you were clicking around and see projects. For now, for this lesson, focus just on the projects within Chat. So we'll come over to projects and we'll start our first project by clicking on New Project. This is going to let us create a personal project, and we're going to first of all say, what are we working on? This is going to be our Treasury policy assistant. And what we want to do, we want to automate our Treasury compliance and cash flow tracking work. That's it. Pretty simple, nice, clear name, clearly what we're trying to achieve. And then we're going to create the project. So here it is. This is what a project window looks like. So we've got the title right here. We've got the high level. Now these two lines here, these don't impact how it functions. Those are just for your users, for you to remember what's going on. Now, similar to a chat window, we've got a regular chat window here, and the functionality is very similar. I can come down here, I can add files. I've got my skills, which we'll cover in a future lesson. I've got my connectors. I can turn on research, I can turn on web search, and I can have style. I can also come over here, I can select my model, just like in a regular chat. We're going to do our work in this on Sonnet 4.6. I talk about the different models in the last lesson. And then just like before, we can dictate. Now we do have a couple of extra features up here. I can edit the project details or archive it if I want to. I can pin it if I want to. So if I pinned this one, it's going to show up right here under my pinned. For something like a policy assistant, that's probably something you want to do. And then I can also share it. Now, when I share it on a team plan, I'm not sharing the conversations I'm having. I'm sharing the memory and the context and the files. That's what I'm sharing. Now, what's really different from the chat is this over here. So project memory will show after a few chats. So within this project, just for you, not for your team, as you have conversations, Claude's going to pick up on things that keep coming up, and it's going to automatically add that memory into the context for you to help you out. That's just going to happen automatically. You can edit it once it's there, but you really don't need to touch it. It's just Claude trying to help you out by picking up on things you're having a lot of conversations about. What we do want to edit is the instructions. This is what Claude is calling the system prompt, and then the files. And that's really what we're going to spend our time designing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to instructions by editing the instructions. Now, we can come in here and we can type this all up, but a much faster way to do it is to have Claude actually help us with it. So for this, we're going to go to regular chat. We're just going to open up a new chat, and then we're going to go ahead and dictate in here. Act as an AI expert. I need your help writing a system prompt for a Claude project that I can put into instructions. This project is going to be a Treasury policy assistant for me. I'm going to give it documents like my investment policy statement, my account thresholds, and other key information. I want to make sure that this prompt has my entity structure, the thresholds, my output preferences, standing instructions, and escalation instructions included. For thresholds and entity structure, I'm going to give those to you in files. For output preferences, I want you to use clear, crisp analyst language that is very fact-focused. For standing instructions, never invent anything. If it's not in a document, ask for more information. If something is critical, meaning it is significantly below a threshold, or if something is significantly out of compliance with the policy, I want you to flag it and make it very clear in the output what the issue is. Including action steps will also be great. Please generate the system prompt at this time. All right, so there's our prompt put in. Again, this is not the system prompt. This is us asking Claude to write the system prompt for us. Nobody knows how to write a system prompt better for Claude than Claude. We'll go ahead and send that away. Again, we're using the Sonnet 4.6 model. This is not really intense. We're just asking it to do a system prompt. That's pretty basic. And it's going to come back and give us this really nicely formatted prompt. So there's our system prompt. Here's our role and purpose. This is great. You don't speculate, estimate, or invent. Here's the knowledge base. So this is the information we'll put in the project. Here's our entity structure. Refer to the entity structure document. We have our thresholds. And if we ever have issues with the thresholds, we're going to come back and type them in here. If necessary, if Claude's not getting them well enough from our files, we'll do that as one of our testing and adjusting steps. Here's the output preferences. Here's the example format. So that's really great. It's actually put in an example. Here's our standing instructions. Now, these are really clear. I want to read these for you. Never invent, cite your source, scope your analysis, so don't go beyond the prompt, and maintain entity separation. Treat each entity as distinct unless defined otherwise. And then here's the escalation protocol and a format with a nice little alert to tell you it's critical. It also says what to do with information is complete, state what's missing, explain the gap on the analysis, and ask a specific targeted question. So again, remember, AI tools don't just have to save us time in doing the work, they can save us time in the setup. Because think about how long it would have taken for you to type all of this out. I was able to talk a prompt in 20 seconds and then have all of this work done for us. So now we're going to go ahead and load our system prompt in. So we'll copy everything from the actual system prompt. We'll leave out the things where Claude's just talking to us. So it'll end right here. We'll go back to our project, which is still sitting there waiting for us. There's our Treasury Policy Assistant. And we'll go ahead and add that into instructions as our memory. All right, make sure all of it copied in. Here's all of our information, all of our different sections, the 5 steps we learned about. And we'll go ahead and save that. Now remember, you don't want to be changing your system prompt on a daily basis, probably not even weekly, but it will change over time. Don't think you have to get it exactly right. As the tool gives you outputs you don't exactly like, you can tweak it. Over time, as things change, you can tweak it. You're not locked in. You don't want to be constantly changing it, but you're not locked in. So here's the first piece of context we're going to work with. This is the F9 Coffee Shop investment policy. We've got our purpose and objectives. We have our guiding principles. We've got our scope. We have the roles and responsibilities of each person in this process. Authorized financial institutions. What is our actual cash and investment policy? What is our debt policy? What are our internal controls and segregation of duties? What are we going to do for reporting and monitoring? One of those is the daily liquidity summary that we built. That's cool. We have the exceptions and violations, policy review and updates, and then an acknowledgement that we need everyone in the department to acknowledge this. So that's going to be our first piece of context. So we'll come over to Claude. We'll go to Files. Now, when I click Add Files, you see there's a couple options. I can upload from the device. I can add text context and just paste it in. I can connect it to GitHub. That's definitely more advanced. Or I can go to Google Drive to pull in context. In this case, we'll just upload from the device. There's our investment policy. We'll go ahead and attach that and wait for it to pop in. So now again, when I open any new chats, any chat here are going to have access to these files. This is what I'm talking about when I say we want to put in kind of the permanent standing documents. I mean, our investment policy, we shouldn't be changing that more than annually. Maybe in an emergency or an acquisition or something, we'll change it every 6 months, but that we shouldn't really be touching this. Very different than the actual bank data that we'll be putting over here. Now for the second piece, for step 4, I'm going to add in the thresholds. So I'll come over here, and this is going to be the thresholds. So we'll say, here's Astoria, here's the operating checking, the currency is USD, here's the minimum balance, and if something is wrong here, it is severe. This is our key account. And then here's our reserve savings. I don't want more than 900,000. I want no less than 400,000, but it's a reserve, so this is just information. So this is the severity and where that's going to come from. So we'll go ahead and attach our thresholds versus having to copy and paste them in every time. We'll add our file. We'll upload from device. We'll go ahead and add our thresholds in and wait for that to attach. All right, there we go. So we've got our investment policy. We've got our thresholds. We're ready to test this out. Now, let's go ahead and give it some. Now, for starters, let's go ahead and give an easy question just purely based on the context it has, not asking it to do any analysis. So we'll come up here and we'll ask a pretty simple question. We are expecting an influx of an extra $500,000 of free cash. What are our options for investing this cash? So we know this isn't our investment policy statement for how we can handle cash. It's a basic question just to see if this is all set up right, if Claude understands its role, and how that's going to work. So we'll send that away, and we'll see if kind of this basic question answer functionality is set up from our policy documents. All right, Claude's thinking. Now, also, as you use the project, it's going to get faster over time. It's going to start to know the context. It's going to start to know the files, and it's going to save some of that. So you'll see here it says it's reading the skills and the threshold file. It's going to start to pull in skills. It's going to start to save that context, and things are going to get faster. So what you just saw is it created an Excel skill from Anthropic. It just pulled that skill in to read the Excel file, and now it's coming back. So here's the pre-deployment check. It's saying before deploying, you want to confirm whether any reserve or savings accounts are below their minimums. Now, we didn't directly ask that, but that's somewhere else in the policy. So it's really getting it, and you'll recognize these are our reserves. So that's great. Then our investment options are down here. So these are the approved investment options. This is what I can do with the cash. And based on the maturity, these are approvals. So if it's less than 90 days, no additional approvals needed because we want the Treasury team to be able to manage cash. Up to 12 months, CFO approval. If I'm going to go beyond 12 months, I need CFO and I need the ownership. That could be the board. That could be more senior executives. The CEO, in this case, is a chain of coffee shops. So it would be the ownership. That's all correct. Here's the concentration limits. Now, this is great. So this is from... Now, notice I hadn't pointed this out yet. Each section is saying what investment policy section it's referencing. So we're getting a full report here. It's adding in what's prohibited. Don't do any of this. And even better, because we asked it to give action items, it's giving us a recommendation saying this is what a compliance structure might look like. And then it says to proceed, I need one thing, which location. So it's saying I actually need some additional information so I can really help you look at the minimums. So that's really great. Now, the one thing I caught, if you were paying attention, will come up here. The one thing I caught is that it assumed that we had 1.6 million of reserve account capacity. It didn't really understand that the reserve accounts were just the thresholds and not the actual balances. So we want to clarify that in the system prompt to make sure that doesn't happen again. So we'll come back over here, we'll go to our instructions, and we'll just find out if we can tweak this manually so you can see that process. Let's see, all analysis must be traceable to a specific document. If it's not clearly stated, thresholds, perfect. Let's say, note that the thresholds are only the fixed thresholds and not reflective of the live balances. If you don't have data on the live balances, don't assume anything about the current balance. And that should fix that one relatively small issue we saw that it didn't understand exactly what the range of the variance. And that should fix the issue that it didn't quite understand the range of the reserve thresholds. So we'll go ahead and save that. And now we'll ask something a little bit more complex. So we're going to go ahead and put in our prompt, and then we'll attach our data. I need you to evaluate 2 days of bank data and let me know if any transactions occurred that were outside of policy. So we'll make that prompt quite simple. We'll leave it a little vague to see how the tool handles that vagueness. Then we'll go back, we'll add our 2 days of data. Here's day 1, here's day 2. We'll go ahead and attach those. And we'll send it off and let Claude do its magic. Now, every time you send this away within the project, you're creating a new chat. When this chat's done, I'll go back and show you how both of our chats are there because I started a new one. Now, here what we see it doing is we see it again calling in skills, and it's reading the new data it's given and comparing it to the thresholds. So it's going to check all the documents it has, and it's already coming back and saying, were the transactions compliant? Bad news, we've got some critical flags, and the good news, they're very clearly called out right at the top. So very critical, the account balance went negative with a $240,000 equipment purchase, and we may not necessarily have had the approval for this. So we're seeing in IPS section 6.1, we didn't maintain cash sufficiency, and we may not have had CFO approval for the capital expense considering we went negative. Then it has some action items of what we need to do immediately. There was also a $240,000 debit to hardware for a bulk espresso machine purchase. Again, some policies may have been breached. And then if we come down here, we have another critical one. There was an outgoing wire transfer, no policy basis evident. And then we have an unexpected $320,000 credit from an external account that's been flagged. So those are 4 things we want to check immediately. Day 1 was fine, but day 2 was just a complete mess. And all of these things happened outside of policy. And it gave us a summary here of issues by severity. So a really nice analysis, very clearly flagging what our issues are and very clearly calling us to action where we need to take action. Now, I'm going to do one more test, but I did want to briefly show you 2 additional things we hadn't covered yet. First of all, over on files, there is a limit to the project capacity, and I mentioned you don't want to add too much. You really want to focus on quality. Our 2 documents so far, all of our thresholds and our entire policy memo are using 1%. So you've clearly got some room here, but again, less is more when it comes to AI tools. The other thing I wanted to show you is, again, within the project, it's holding multiple chats. So this was our first test about what to do with $500,000 of free cash, and this was our transaction policy review. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to check the guardrails. Guardrails are kind of those standing rules, it's another term for them, to make sure that the tool doesn't do anything out of bounds. So I'm going to ask a question that we don't want it to answer. I need your help. Tell me specific stocks I should purchase to invest the company's money. Be very clear about exactly which stocks are your favorite and why I should invest the company's money in them. So this is a question that we don't want the tool to answer. It'll come back with an answer, but we want us to tell it either it's outside of policy, because I'm pretty sure we don't allow stock purchases, and I shouldn't be making these recommendations. We want to see something along those lines. You always want to try to poke at it to make sure it's not going to do anything crazy when you really get this out there and in production. And we're getting back exactly what we want. It's telling me I can't help with that request for 2 reasons. 1, it's prohibited by your investment policy statement. We cannot use equities or equity-linked instruments for our cash. And 2, it's outside my role. I'm configured as a Treasury policy analyst. I'm not here to provide investment advice. Even if it was permitted, this is not something I'm scoped to do. But here's what I can help with, and that is a perfect response from our project. It gave us back exactly what we were hoping for it to give us. So with a couple tweaks to the system prompt, all 3 tests are passed, the system prompt is working, the files are accessible, and the escalation logic is firing. Now we saw one test, it didn't really fail, we just wanted to tweak it, but if a test fully fails, if Claude cites a threshold wrong or missed a principal or didn't escalate, we're going to go back to the system prompt, find the gap, and fix it. Now, if it's small, we can fix it ourselves. You saw me tweak it. If it's big, we can go back to our Claude chat and have it tweak it. Now, some common questions I get. Why would I write the thresholds in both a system prompt and upload a file? Well, the answer is the system prompt is a fast reference. The file is the source of truth. If your thresholds or your formatting change, you update the file and don't have to rewrite the system prompt. The system prompt tells Claude, look at the uploaded file for current thresholds. Now, what happens if I upload a file and then update it? Well, the answer is that the old version stays in the conversation history. New conversations will see the new file. If you're mid-conversation and update a file, you might need to start a fresh conversation for Claude to use the new version. But can Claude access both the old and the new files at the same time? Well, yes, it can. Claude can cross-reference. If the IPS says investments must be investment grade, and the threshold file shows a particular account balance, Claude can apply both pieces of information in one answer. Now, how often do I update the system prompt? You only need to do that when standing rules change, entity structure changes, thresholds change, output preferences change, or something about your business changes, or you're not liking the responses you're getting back. Most changes, policy updates, account balances, these go into the uploaded files, not the system prompt. And most certainly, live data should go into your conversation, not into the files or the system prompt. And the final question, can I use this project for non-Treasury questions? Technically, yes, but practically no. The system prompt is specifically tuned for Treasury. If you ask it to write marketing copy, it might try, but it will caution you that it's not designed for that. This is exactly what we saw with the investment analyst. It was more aggressive there because it was so outside the scope, but this is where you can just use separate projects for separate jobs. Now, with all that, your project is configured. Everything you build in the next module, Module 3, artifacts, automation, complex workflows, skills, all of it runs inside this same environment, the system prompt. The uploaded files are available everywhere. You've built the foundation. Now, Module 3 is where you'll take this Treasury assistant and give it the ability to produce complex outputs. That's next.